This year I decided to reread an entire Mortal Instruments series to kind of remind myself as to why I even continued reading all of Cassandra Clare's books. And after finishing the whole series, may I say, I'm even more confused. The first book is The City of Bones, and it follows 15-year-old Clary who lives with her mom, who is a painter in New York City. She goes with her best friend Simon to a nightclub, I think to celebrate her birthday. I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't remember. Actually, I guess a warning is that I don't remember most of the plot. All of it is kind of a blur, so if I say something incorrect, oh well. In that nightclub, Clary sees a mysterious-looking group of teenagers who she follows to this janitor closet thingy, and she sees them. Yeah, she's very scared. She runs off. The next day, when she's out with Simon, she bumps into Jace, who is one of the three mysterious-looking teenagers she saw at a nightclub the night before. Now, Jace explains to her that there must be a reason that she was able to see them in the first place, because normally for mundanes, shadow hunters are invisible. They weren't actually killing a human, they killed a demon, and that's the responsibility of shadow hunters, that they're supposed to protect the humans from demons. In the middle of the conversation, Clary gets a phone call from her mom, who sounds absolutely distressed. She's telling her, don't come home. She is begging her practically, and in the background there's lots of disturbing noise, sounds like glasses breaking, and the phone call rapidly ends. Naturally, Clary, being so scared and worried for her mom, she runs home and she finds the apartment completely demolished, and her mom is nowhere to be seen. Clary looks around the apartment and she finds a demon who attacks her. She's trying to fight it off, but unfortunately she gets bitten. Finally, Jace catches up to Clary. He kills off the demon and he puts a healing rune on her. Clary loses her consciousness and wakes up in a completely different space that she's never been before. She finds out that she is in an institute. An institute, it's kind of like a facility that is supervising a certain region. So for example, the book takes place in New York, so this is the New York's institute. In that institute lives Jace, Alec, and Isabelle Lightwood. Alec and Isabelle are siblings, and Jace is an orphan who was taken by the Lightwood family to be raised with their children. And they all supervise the New York area, and they live in that institute along with their teacher. Now, there is a ton of exposition in that book, especially in that moment where Clary is learning everything. On one hand, I actually didn't mind it as much as I would mind it in other books, but I think it's because there was so much information. Like, you have to learn so much stuff because the world building, in my opinion, is kind of heavy. There's a lot of things. I have a full page of notes and I'm gonna try to get over them to you. So there are not just demons and shadow hunter. There's actually the whole underworld where there's lots of different races. For example, we have warlocks, werewolves, vampires, and fairies. Shadowhunters created a government called Clave that created all of the laws that both Shadowhunters and the underworld has to listen to in order for everyone to live in peace. Clave has its headquarters in Alicante, which is a fictional world, and it's protected by different spells, so no human can get into it. I think that it's pretty obvious, since, well, this is a YA fantasy book, that, you know, Clary and Jace, they kind of hit it off pretty well. Definitely are into each other, which breaks both Simon, Clary's best friend, heart, and Alec, Jace's best friend, heart, because both of them like have crushes on the other one. But honestly, I kind of don't care about that. Like, I really feel like the relationships in this book series is one of the worst aspects of it. And we're gonna get into why. Clary asks Jace and his friends to help her look for her mom, and one of the leads brings them to a person named Valentine. Now, Valentine is a very interesting persona in the Shadowhunter universe. He's a person that allegedly died 15 years ago. Do you remember how old was Clary? Coincidence? I think not. Valentine basically had different morality than Clay. He believed that Clay is not ruling the underworld and Shadowhunters well enough. He believes that they should have an iron fist above everything, that basically all of the races, vampires, werewolves, etc. are almost like an abomination. You know how to say this politely? He was just racist. That's honestly all you need to know about him. He has created a little group called the Circle. Clary's mom used to be a part of. Not only that, Clary learns that her mom Jocelyn used to also be married to Valentine, and they had a son. However, after a while, their marriage started falling apart and Jocelyn left Valentine. And I think after a couple of months, Valentine and his son tragically died in a fire. And we know damn well the guy's alive. Another thing we learn about Jocelyn is that when she was running away from her abusive husband, she took away something from him. And that thing is what Valentine is looking for now. It's called the Mortal Cup, which is an instrument that allows you to create new Shadowhunters. It was a gift from one of the angels to humans to help them fight off demons. There is actually 3 mortal instruments. There is a cup, a mirror, and something. For now, Valentine is only after the cup, and he knows that Jocelyn has it, but when he was looking for it in the apartment, he didn't find it. Jocelyn also didn't want to tell him where it is, so he put her in coma and now is keeping her hostage because he thinks that maybe if one of the loved ones of Jocelyn has the cup, they're obviously gonna want to exchange cup for the Jocelyn. Towards like 75% of the book, Clary realizes that her mom was able to put objects in her paintings because, as we already established, her mom was a painter. And Clary, when she sees the Mortal Cup, I think on one of the sculptures or something like that, she remembers, wait a second, I saw that. I saw the Mortal Cup. I know my mom painted it, and she painted it on tarot cards that she gave the downstairs neighbor Dorothea. I mean, why did Jocelyn decide to give such a precious item to literally just a downstairs neighbor? I don't know, but okay. Naturally, Clary and Jace are going to Dorothea to ask her if they can look through the cards. Clary pulls out the cup from the card. Clary brings the cup to the institute where, we have another traitor on board. The teacher that technically seemed very sweet and basically taught Clary everything she needed to know about Valentine. He actually works with him. He calls Valentine. Valentine shows up. I think he also kidnaps Jace. He takes the Mortal Cup and goes back to his hideout. Somehow Clary finds the hideout. She finds her mom. She realizes that her mom is in a coma, but she still has to go for Jace, right? Goes into this big room where there is a big table with lots of food in there, and there's just Jace and Valentine sitting, having a family dinner? I mean it when I say that it's a family dinner. Because Jace tells her, Clary, remember when I told you that I used to have a dad? Yeah, that dad is Valentine? So naturally, Clary does a quick math in her head. 2 + 2 is 4. Oh no. What I've done before. Yeah, Clary and Jace are siblings. And they kissed like 10 pages earlier. I'm so uncomfortable. The best thing is that Jace was just so chill about it. Clary was having her entire world shaken up, and Jace was like, no, we're like a found family. Oh, what a lovely meeting. Valentine leaves with the cup, leaving both Jace and Clary, and I guess us as well, super confused. That's where the story ends. Now we're gonna go to book 2, which is City of Ashes. There are 2 books in the entire story where, in my opinion, they're so bad that you should just skip them. This is one of them. Literally nothing happens in it. Honestly, I'm not even gonna shorten the plot for you. I'm just gonna tell you key points you gotta remember. Simon and Clary now are dating because Clary's trying to move on from Jace, and she's just using Simon, who always had a crush on her, as her rebound.
All around me are familiar
I did not like it at all. Simon in general starts as a very nice guy TM character, and he is even worse in the second book. I'm also like so red, I just realized. I don't even know why I'm so red, but okay. Now you see, Clary at least is trying to get over Jace. Jace, however, pines after Clary the entire book, and it's so uncomfortable to read about it. He is constantly looking at her, you know, in a romantic way. He is thinking about her. He just basically constantly is trying to convince her that they can do it. Jocelyn is still in coma. Like the entire book, she's just in coma. And that is basically the whole book. Just Simon and Clary being a terrible couple and Jace being just terrible. Clary, may I say, out of nowhere, realizes that she has superpowers. There are hardly any hints throughout the whole book. She just suddenly realizes that she can create runes, which is a really cool and unique power. I really like that, and I wish it was explored more, but unfortunately no. And then literally the next page, she just comes out to everyone. She's like, hey guys, I can create runes. I just found out about it like yesterday, but... And Simon turns into a vampire, but not just regular vampire. Towards the end of the book, Jace allows Simon to feed off of his blood, and that somehow allows him to be able to walk during the day, because as we know, the day and vampires don't really go well together. Besides that, the book is entirely skippable. Oh wait, I guess one more thing is that Valentine gets, I think, one of the second instruments that I don't even know what it is, but it doesn't really matter. He has it. The only good thing about this book is the fact that towards the end, Simon, and I was surprised that it was Simon, breaks up with Clary, and he tells her that, I know that you're never gonna love me as much as I love you. You're always gonna love Jace, and I deserve better. And you know what, Simon? You go, girl. You do deserve better, honestly. Like, I was rooting for Simon in this moment, and I think this was the moment where Simon's entire character arc finally started, and he actually went from the most hated character to probably one of the best characters in the entire book. So book 3. Now this concludes kind of the first half of the story, because in my opinion, basically, even though there's 6 books in the entire Mortal Instrument series, it's kind of like 2 trilogies within one bigger series, and this is kind of like a finale of the first trilogy. In the City of Glass, oh my god, my notes are so long, I just realized, wait. Remember how Jace was pining over Clary in the second book? Yeah, in the third one, it's Clary's turn to do that, because, you know, she's single again, so... We're going to vacation to Alicante. Valentine is preparing for a war with Clave, because now he has 2 mortal instruments. The third instrument is actually the lake in Alicante, so he has to go there personally anyway. In Alicante, we meet other shadow hunters and get to know Clary and Jace's backstories a little bit. For example, we learn that Jace, when he was young, he had angel's blood injected to him that gave Jace extraordinary superpowers like strength, speed, and cockiness, I guess. When Jace and Clary are learning all these things, there's this scene that kind of forces them to rapidly escape the house, and they, you know, I don't know how to say this in English, but they kind of like jump out of the window or something. And of course, they land on top of each other. It's so weird because I'm like 99% sure that Jace is hard in that moment, and Clary, she's feeling stuff, and I'm like, your siblings? One of the other shadow hunters that we meet is Sebastian, who at the beginning seems really nice and just wants to help out Clary. Well, that is until he forces himself onto her. Not only that, but this little boy, he betrays everyone. He kills a child, Max, who is the youngest brother of the Lightwood family. And he reveals that he has been working with Valentine this entire time. So he runs off from Clave. Jace decides that if he wants to find Valentine, he needs to follow Sebastian, because Sebastian's gonna lead him to Valentine. Another extremely uncomfortable scene incoming. Jace, before leaving, decides to say goodbye to his loved ones, and obviously he goes to Clary in the middle of the night and tells her that, well, if only we weren't related, we could properly sleep, wink, wink together. So they just like sleep in one bed while cuddling and saying each other romantic things as if it was any better. Jace in the morning goes after Sebastian, and at the same time, Magnus, who is a warlock, finally takes down the curse from Jocelyn that was keeping her in coma. So Jocelyn wakes up and she goes to talk to Clary, her daughter. Jocelyn reveals to Clary that Jace is not Jonathan, and Jonathan is her son. Now Clary, of course, runs off to the sunset to find Jace to tell him that they can finally be together. But Jace is kind of in the middle of fighting Sebastian. During that battle, Sebastian tells him that, you know what, Jace, you're kind of like a worse version of me. Jace is like, what do you mean? I'm a good fighter. Oh, that's not what I meant. I meant that you're Jace and I'm Jonathan. My cat is trying to join us, I guess. Are you aware that you're a cat? Come on. Oh, look at little baby. So Sebastian is Jonathan, and Jonathan is Jocelyn's son. So you may wonder, then who the heck is Jace, and why does he know Valentine? Why does he say that Valentine is his son? It turns out that 15 years ago, Valentine decided that it's a brilliant idea to have a double life, and I can't focus when my baby is just desperate for attention. So Valentine had two sons. One of them was biological, and the other one was the one that he was taking care of. Biological is Jonathan, and the one that he was taking care of was Jace. And they lived in two separate houses. Valentine was basically traveling back and forth between the houses. What is even funnier is that we learned that these houses were not even that far away from each other. So I'm like, how on earth did these boys never met? Well, as we already established, Valentine is a freak and he was experimenting on his children. So when it comes to Jonathan, he injected a demon blood into him. When he was growing up, he started developing some darker powers. Jace, on the other hand, had angel's blood in him and he started having a bit more light powers. Now, the problem is that Valentine just wanted a super soldier, but he ended up having too big of a softie and then an absolute freak. So he decided to basically let Jace go by pretending that he died, and then he just took care of Jonathan because he was like, well, if I let him go, he's gonna commit like mass murder. Finally, Clary catches up to Jace and Sebastian / Jonathan. Valentine shows up. He's just so happy because he's having the biggest family reunion. The only person missing is Jocelyn, I guess. He wants to complete his ritual in summoning an angel, because I also forgot that the reason why he's collecting all of the instruments is for summoning an angel. I also forgot why he even wanted to summon an angel in the first place. Now, there's a lot of stuff happening. Jace kills Sebastian. Valentine kills Jace. Clary is knocked on the ground, almost unconscious. And conveniently, the lake that I mentioned, that is the third instrument, is around here, let's imagine. Somewhere here on the shore stands Valentine. Behind him, there is a pentagram where he was putting all of the instruments and he was writing all the names and stuff like that on to summon the angel. And then behind the pentagram, there's Clary just crawling like this. Conveniently, Valentine decides to turn his head to the lake and perform the ritual. Clary does such a W move because she just crawls into the pentagram, erases Valentine's name from it, and I think she uses her own blood to write her own name. When the angel shows up, he's saying, "What do you want, my master?" And Valentine's saying, "Well, I want this, this, and this." And then, the angel is like, "Not you? Her?" Valentine is shocked. He's trying to hurt her, but, well, the angel's not having it because he's like, "Well, I can't let you hurt my master." So, as a punishment for summoning the angel and asking for stuff as if Valentine thought of himself that he's any higher than an angel, the angel kills him and asks Clary if she wants anything. Basically, he gives her one wish that she can spend on whatever she wants, and Clary, looking at dead Jace, obviously chooses to revive him. And that's kind of how the story ends. My problem is that you created such a big villain. You created Valentine, who was so powerful you didn't know how to defeat. So you created a Deus Ex Machina, really. For those of you who don't know, I might also be pronouncing Deus Ex Machina incorrectly, but basically it's a concept that originated in ancient Greece when they were having these big theater shows, and the Greeks back in the day, they didn't know how to write stories yet because writing was not developed as it is right now. So when they were creating a war or a conflict in their stories, usually they would, at the end of the show, drop down the statue of Zeus, and they would pretend that it was Zeus who came from the heaven and he's solving all of their issues, basically. That's why it's called Deus Ex Machina, because they literally were dropping a statue of Zeus onto the stage. In my opinion, it's like the laziest way of writing a story. Like, how can you create a badass story, have really powerful main characters, a really powerful villain, and then just use a third party who's more powerful than both of them and just like, yep, I'm gonna solve the problems. I'm gonna just snap, kill everyone. Oh, you're the good girl, so I'm gonna spare you. Now we can move on to the fourth one, which is kind of the beginning of the second trilogy. Clary and Jace finally can be together, right? Okay, you can sit here. Jace is growing more and more distant from Clary, and she has no idea why. She starts blaming herself and is trying to talk to him, but he is constantly pushing her away. And finally, he reveals to her that one of the reasons why he doesn't want to be with her is because he loves her too much. And the other reason is that he has been having a lot of nightmares, where in those nightmares he hurts Clary. So basically, Jace wants to break up with her because he loves her too much and because of his dreams. Fortunately, Clary decides to shoot some sense into him and be like, that's not the reason why we should break up. Like, maybe we should talk about it, what's going on. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we're having more Simon in these books. And I did praise that Simon is kind of going through a character development, but he's still going through it. And this is the book where he has his flop era. Simon dates two girls at once. He is dating Isabelle and Maya. Maya is like one of the most mistreated characters, has literally no character arc except for being someone's love interest. But basically, Simon dates both of them at the same time because he uses the excuse of, well, we never said that we're exclusive. You cannot use that as an excuse when you're cheating on someone, okay? I don't think that's how it works, you know? I think that it's very safe to assume that when you're starting to date someone, you are exclusive unless it's said so. So I don't know what's up with that. It's a very flimsy excuse, Simon. We mentioned earlier about Jace's nightmares. It actually turns out that they are not supposed to be there, and it's Lilith. Yes, the big demon lady Lilith is the one sending these nightmares for Jace because she is trying to bring back Sebastian back to life. You may ask yourself, why on earth is she doing that? Well, I also mentioned that Sebastian had demon's blood injected to him when he was a little child. That demon's blood is Lilith. So you could say that Lilith is like a blood mother. Lilith forces the trio, Clary, Jace, and Simon, to help her complete the ritual of bringing back Sebastian back to life. She threatens them, and one of the things that she has to do in order to complete this ritual is kind of bond Jace's and Sebastian's lives back together. I don't really know what is the reason behind it, but for the plot's purpose, we are gonna pretend that I understand. Now, Jace and Sebastian are connected. When everything goes down, Lilith gets killed, but she does complete the entire ritual. Everyone gets hurt, and finally, when everything calms down, turns out that not only Sebastian is missing, but also Jace. 5th book. Oh boy. Remember when I mentioned that there are 2 books that are just horrible? This book will be my enemy. You can skip it. Unless you want to suffer, then that's a perfect book to do that. I did not have a fun time. I was skipping through most of the descriptions. I was honestly skimming through most of the dialogues towards the middle part especially. So I might be missing some context, but honestly, I don't regret it. As we already established, Sebastian and Jace are now connected. So if Clave kills Sebastian because now they know that he's back, then also they're gonna kill Jace. Obviously, our friends, so Clary, Alec, Isabelle, and Simon don't want to do that because they don't want to lose Jace. But they also can't tell that if they kill Sebastian, they're gonna kill Jace. Because of this, Clave will want to hunt down Jace to kind of sacrifice him in order to kill Sebastian. They're gonna be like, well, this is Shadowhunter's responsibility. So they are trying to figure out a way to break the bond between them. During one of the nights, Clary's just laying in her bed and suddenly Jace shows up and he kind of starts flirting with her. Clary does feel like there's something off about it. She wants to ask where has he been and what has he been doing. He looks like he's having fun. And then we see the spawn of Satan himself. Sebastian comes in the room and first of all, I think he acts kind of like, oh, you don't have to stop in front of me. Like you can keep making out. I'm just gonna stare like a creep at you, okay? And Sebastian offers Clary that she could join them because they just so happen to be traveling all around the world, just seeing places, definitely not doing anything evil. Well, Clary obviously at the beginning doesn't want to agree and she's so confused over why is Jace with Sebastian, why does he seem to enjoy Sebastian's company? Clary realizes that I think he has been brainwashed. Something's wrong and maybe it's the bond that it's making Jace feel the same things that Sebastian does. Should I turn on like this light? I genuinely can't tell if that's better or worse. After Clary realizes that Jace has been brainwashed, she decides, okay, Sebastian, I'm taking in your offer. I'm gonna travel with you guys because she wants to find a way to break the bond between them and she's hoping that she will be able to do it when she actually sees them all the time. The rest of the book is basically just traveling from one place to another. It's boring as heck. Not only is it boring, it is weird as heck. We already kind of established that Jace's and Clary's relationship was weird in the first trilogy, right? I think you can guess where this is going. Yeah, Sebastian develops romantic feelings towards his sister and he's constantly flirting with her. He pins her against the wall. He touches her hair. No. And the thing is, I want to kind of stop to comment on it because on one hand, the fact that Sebastian is so messed up, like to the point that he's an absolute psycho. How on earth is he attracted to his sister? This basically could have added even more evil to his character. His character basically could have looked completely irredeemable and that this could have been a really, really deep and weird and twisted thing that you could have added to make your villain look not just a psychopath, he actually would feel scary. But I feel like it doesn't work for this story. And it's very simple. I don't think you can villainize a behavior that you were romanticizing just 2 books ago. Even if it's objectively a weird as heck behavior and everyone, I feel like, would naturally agree that yes, this is an evil behavior and we should demonize it. But again, I'm just trying to think like, why was it okay for Clary and Jace to pine over each other even though both them and we as readers didn't know that they're not siblings? So again, like, why was it okay in the previous trilogy to romanticize that behavior even though it made everyone feel uncomfortable? I want to give the benefit of the doubt and maybe simply Cassandra, the author of these books, just realized how much she goofed when she has has written Clary's and Jace's relationship basically incestual, and this is her way of trying to redeem herself and say to the readers that, hey guys, I have learned from my mistakes and I know incest is bad, so here is me showing you that only an actual creep and weirdo and a psychopath would do something like that. But again, it doesn't work in a situation when you are romanticizing the same behavior 2 books ago. I mean, I get the effort, but it just doesn't work. It sends like 2 different messages. I'm also progressively getting more and more red as this video goes on. I think I'm gonna become a tomato by the end. The only few important things that happen in this book is that Sebastian gets into the possession of what I would call a dark mortal cup, which, as we already established, a mortal cup can create shadow hunters, but a dark mortal cup changes shadow hunters into dark ones. And the dark ones are basically like a brainless army that serves Sebastian. That's what his plan is. He's basically trying to gather shadow hunters, turn them to the dark ones so that they follow him and they create an army against Clave. Clary also gets into a possession of a sword that contains heavenly fire. This is basically a power gifted by the angels, and it's supposed to burn all evil. So she stabs Jace with that sword because she believes that the representation of evil will be the bond between Sebastian and Jace. And chances are that if she stabs Jace with that heavenly fire, that fire is gonna go through that bond to Sebastian as well, and it's gonna defeat him as well. So she just takes her shots, she stabs Jace. It does in fact burn out the bond that he has with him. Sebastian does get hurt because of it, but he doesn't die, so it wasn't strong enough to defeat him. But also, a very interesting thing is that the heavenly fire didn't just disappear afterwards. It didn't go back to the sword. If anything, when Clary stabbed Jace, the heavenly fire went into Jace. So now Jace is basically a nuclear bomb walking because he is a man on fire. He's challenging Katniss, and that's how the book ends. Sebastian disappears with his dark cup. He's wounded, so he's taking care of that, and Jace is now a weapon. The final jam. I said a lot of negative things about these books today, but one thing I have to say, this book is the best out of the whole series. I genuinely really enjoyed it from the very beginning till the very end. I loved how every single relationship that was built up to that point, every character arc, just everyone's choices feel very in character. I feel like this is the moment where Cassandra really improved her writing style, and she actually took what she has created and made it better, you know? Clave is preparing for the war with Sebastian. So they call in a meeting of all of the representative of each race. So they call a representative of fairies, werewolves, vampires, warlocks, I forgot the name, and shadow hunters. And they all get into one place to discuss what they should do. On that meeting, it turns out that the fairies have an alliance with Sebastian, and they betray everyone by basically poisoning them so that Sebastian can kidnap them. Sebastian keeps everyone hostage and tells Clave that, hey, I can give you the hostages back if you give me Clary and Jace in return. Now this creates multiple types of issues for Clave. On one hand, they don't want to give up Clary and Jace because Clary and Jace are potentially the only thing that they can use against Sebastian. On the other hand, if they don't give Clary and Jace to Sebastian and he kills the hostages, this is gonna create such a big domestic war because warlocks, fairies, werewolves, and vampires just in general have always been very degraded by Clave. So that already creates a huge imbalance between all of these races, and they know that if Clave puts themselves even more above and they say that 2 shadow hunters are more important than representatives of every single one of these races, then they're gonna be pissed and they're gonna go to Sebastian's side. So Clary and Jace realize that Clave has a very difficult decision to make, so they decide to take things into their own hands and they want to find Sebastian on their own and kind of turn themselves in. Their friends, Isabelle, Alec, and Simon all tag along. In the process of finding Sebastian, they realize that he is hiding himself in an alternate dimension. This is interesting because other dimensions were literally never mentioned throughout the whole story. I don't understand. Like, I mean, I get it that Cassandra wanted to set up stories for different books in the future. This is the first time we even learn about the fact that there are different dimensions, and the characters are like, oh, okay, we just gotta go to a different dimension to fight him. So that's what they do. They jump into this different dimension. This dimension is basically like the kingdom of one of the princes of hell. It's a land completely filled with demons. They ultimately are able to find Sebastian, but as it turns out, he knew all along he's coming for them, and he basically welcomes them with his open arms. He only spares Clary because, as we already established, he loves her, and so tells Clary that I can spare your friends and also the hostages I'm keeping if you agree to be my queen. And Clary agrees, only because she and Jace have a secret plan. I knew from the very beginning what's gonna happen, and I don't know if it's because I read these books 10 years ago or it's because it's actually really predictable. I think it's the second one, but Clary sits down on the throne for the queen and she accepts Sebastian's offer. So he tells her that if you want to seal the deal, you have to kiss me. This allows Clary to get close to him because before then he had kind of like a magical shield around him, but because, you know, she has to kiss him, she has to physically get close to him. So when he is not paying attention to what's happening, she pulls out a sword and she stabs him. It wasn't just a regular sword. It turns out that this sword contained the heavenly fire that previously Jace was carrying. So Jonathan / Sebastian starts burning. All of the evil in him is being erased. Everyone is screaming. There's just pure chaos. And finally, Sebastian falls to the ground. He's still barely alive. But it's not Sebastian. It's Jonathan. And yeah, Jonathan basically says that Sebastian was not me. It was my alter ego. Yeah, I would never do anything bad like that. I would never. At the very end of the book, we have a character redemption arc. I don't like that suddenly it turns out that this Sebastian was always just an evil alter ego of Jonathan. He just had some evil genes in him, and now that they're gone, suddenly he's good. Like, no! Everyone was looking at him like, yeah, I don't forgive you. The entire story concludes when the characters are trying to escape this alternate reality, alternate dimension, but they realize that they no longer have a way out. So Magnus, Warlock, who is half demon, half human, calls his dad, who turns out to be the said prince of this dimension, and asks him for a favor so that he lets them go to their own dimension. Since this is a prince of hell, he wants something in return, so he asks for Simon's immortality and also all of his memories of shadow hunters. This is obviously a very heavy price to pay, but Simon agrees to do it for his friends. He decides to sacrifice himself, and he's saying that, well, I haven't been a vampire for that long, so if you take away my immortality and I start aging again, it's not gonna affect me, and I never really wanted to be a vampire, and it's okay. And I thought that, ooh, these are high stakes. I'm surprised that Simon is taking such a courageous act to just save his friends. Yeah, what was the point of it? Literally 10 pages later, they're trying to get back Simon's memories. The end. Now, I also kind of want to briefly talk about certain characters and a few ships, so let's do that. I think that we can start off with Clary. Clary from the very beginning is not like other girls. She loves manga and anime, she plays video games. She also suffers from the reckless and naive main character syndrome, but this is one of the very few times where I actually feel like this works for her character. She she lived with her mom, and basically her mom always lied to her about her shadow hunter origins. She pretended that her daughter is a regular girl. So when Clary realizes that there is this whole life she could have had, but it was basically stolen away from her because of her mom, she obviously wants to be a part of it, but she doesn't know the dangers that come with it. She doesn't know how to fight, she doesn't know how to protect herself, and in my opinion, it makes sense. It makes sense that she's recklessly putting herself in danger because she doesn't actually want to put herself in danger. She just simply wants to be a part of it. She wants to be a part of that life that she could have had. The characters constantly get angry at her, saying like, why did you go after us? We told you to stay safe. Why did you do it again? And finally, Clary just snaps back at them. You can't blame me for the fact that my mother hid that life away from me. You can't blame me for not knowing how to fight, how to defend myself. You can't blame me for not knowing the danger because the truth has always been hidden away from me. Applaud to Clary. This needed to be said. Though I must admit that unfortunately this reckless main character syndrome doesn't leave Clary even once she finally learns how to fight and she learns the dangers of the world. I want to ask something. Why is it in every single YA fantasy that I've read, the parents are always hiding the truth from their kids to protect them? How are you protecting your child from the danger if you don't even tell the kid what the danger is? How are you protecting your kid if you don't teach them how to fight against it? It's almost like, I don't know, pretending that alcohol doesn't exist and thinking that your kid will never drink it because you never told them that alcohol exists. No, that is absolutely not how it works. You should educate your kids about it, and I think this is a very similar thing in this situation. And again, I don't understand why parents do that in literally every single YA fantasy. Why? It's so frustrating. And you could have had a character who, for example, like Clary, has been living for 15 years of her life thinking that she's a normal teenager, or she could live for the 15 years trying to have a normal life but being aware that there's danger around her, and she's fighting and she's training to, just in case if something ever happens, like for example her evil dad is gonna come after her, she knows how to defend herself. And my ultimate conclusion on Clary is that I was surprised, but I actually wasn't annoyed by her. I remember 10 years ago when I read these books, everyone was complaining about how annoying Clary is. I actually find Clary to just act very age appropriate. She just acts like a typical 15-year-old, and I really don't expect 15-year-olds to make the most mature decisions, to never make any mistakes, to just be picture perfect in every single way. She definitely was not as bad as everyone portrayed her to be. Speaking of annoying though, now we're gonna talk about Jace. When I was preparing for this video, I made notes. Let me read to you what I have written in them. Oh my god. What the fuck? Annoying. Your balls just grew. Why is anyone taking him seriously? Will not shut up. I love sarcasm, but I hate Jace's sarcasm. Why is Jace more powerful than the angels themselves? Why is he the chosen one? I remember that even when I was reading these books for the first time, I wasn't a fan of Jace. He wasn't bad, but I felt like he's simply not my type when I was reading that. But reading it again as an adult and being much older than him, I cannot take this voice seriously. Jace has the most obnoxious, cocky, douchebag personality of a main character I've ever seen. You could say that at least he's unique because, truth be told, I have never seen a love interest like this. Jace has such a big attitude where he thinks that every girl is his, that every woman wants to be with him. And I'm like, Jace, if every woman wants to be with you, then maybe it's time for you to call the police. I would understand if Jace's character was 26, not 16, because he truly acts as if he has so much experience. He acts as if the girls are falling whenever they see him. And I'm just like, your balls just grew. His immature behavior is what completely throws me off. It's so funny because usually this type of character is the villain in the story, but here is the main character. And what's worse is that Jace does not change at all. He stays the same exact douchebag from page 1 to the last one. He has no character development at all. Also, as I mentioned, I really love sarcasm, but you need to have a tasteful sarcasm and you need to have good timing for making it work. But Jace makes constantly inappropriate comments in the worst situations. There will be a life and death type of situation, and Jace would be cracking up completely not funny jokes. I feel like if that would actually happen, that someone is, I don't know, holding a knife to his throat, he would get it cut right after saying something. You cannot tell me this boy is still alive in this cruel world that he's living in if he has that attitude. I don't care how powerful he is, he's not powerful enough to fight all of them off. And finally, I don't understand why Jace is considered the chosen one. Jace from the very beginning is considered a prodigy. He is very strong, he's the best in everything he does, which I guess emphasizes his cockiness. But that's the problem, is that towards the end of the book, Jace gets that heavenly fire in him, right? And heavenly fire is supposed to burn out all evil in you, and if you're a good person, then you will be able to use the heavenly fire as your own weapon. How is Jace considered a pure good? Because that is literally what he's described as. He's like the ultimate good person. He's as pure as an angel. Are we talking about the same dude? That douchebag who, by the way, pines over his sister and does incest? I'm pretty sure that's a sin. But Clary and Jace as individuals have their flaws, but I guess they kind of work in the story. Now let's talk about them as a couple. I'm gonna just put the Barbie ew sound over here because that is how I feel about them. Ew. Yeah. I can't get over the fact that not only did they think that they're siblings and they still went after each other. What I was shocked when I realized when I was reading these books is that I thought that they find out that they're siblings at the end of the first book, and for some reason I thought that they find out that they're not siblings in the second book. Oh boy. It turns out that they think that they're siblings for 2 whole books. You could even argue that it's 3 because it's the end of the first one, the entire second one, and almost the entire third one. That is messy. By the end of the 6th book, Jace kind of reflects on their relationship, and he tells Clary that he is so happy that they went through all of these obstacles and they were able to end up together after all. You know, that sounds wonderful until you realize that the obstacle he's talking about is DNA. We have overcome genetics. Another thing that I hated about Clary's and Jace's relationship is the fact that everyone, and I mean everyone, including adults, were glorifying their relationship so much. The amount of times we read other characters talk about how much Clary and Jace love each other, that they would basically shake the mountains and swim across the ocean just to be together. I would understand it if it was Clary and Jace talking like this towards each other because obviously they love each other and they want to tell themselves these kinds of things. But the fact that these are adults telling them that, and there's even a situation where Clary's mother tells her that, who literally had an abusive ex-boyfriend, who by the way was like an adoptive father towards Jace. I think that Jocelyn had Clary when she was 19 or 18, something like that, so let's pretend she had her when she was 19. That means that Jocelyn currently in the story is 34. You're telling me that a 34-year-old woman looks at her 15-year-old daughter and thinks that, oh my god, your relationship with Jace is so serious. I don't want to belittle teenage love. I genuinely believe that there's probably a lot of couples out there who are like high school sweethearts and they have been very happily living together for the past 15 years or so. But I feel like even if you are a high school sweetheart, you can probably also agree with me that most couples don't make it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that when you're a teenager, you simply are still trying to find yourself. Lots of things are changing in your life, and one of those things is a relationship. So again, why is it glorified? They're meant for each other. And I'm like, they're 15. The lighting's getting too harsh, isn't it? Another character I want to talk about is Simon. Simon, as I've mentioned, in my opinion, is one of the best characters because he goes through the biggest change. He goes from nice guy TM to a playboy to a character that actually appreciates friendships, who tries to understand his girlfriend and tries to be a good emotional support support to her, and he's able to see what is more important in a situation. And he showed how much one person can change thanks to other people, because I really believe that it wasn't just like the events and, for example, Simon turning into a vampire that made him a better person. No, it was his friends that made him a better person, and I love that. And I loved how the conclusion of his story could have been, and I'm saying could have been, the fact that all of his character development is basically erased because he's gonna forget everything and everyone around him. And so you're thinking, wait, if he didn't meet the people he has met, would he go through that same character development? Would he be the person that he is right now? And in my opinion, it's such a cool concept to explore, and I thought that, ooh, that's really cool. The stakes are high. No, Cassandra did not want to commit to this idea. He literally starts remembering stuff 10 pages later because the main characters found him and they're trying to help him get his memories back. So it got dark, so this is the lighting we're gonna be doing for the rest. The other couple I want to talk about is Malik. As you noticed, I did not talk about them at all in this story. And I know that Malik is basically fans' favorite ship, and they used to be my favorite ship as well until I reread the stories. If we just put the age gap aside, which is one issue, but okay, this is a fantasy story, I'm willing to look past it. In book 5, Alec starts getting so jealous of Magnus, and I mean, I understand that he is coming from the fact that Magnus is always hiding his life from him, that Alec doesn't actually know much about his own boyfriend, so he is starting to feel insecure, but it's not actually what pissed me off. No, what pissed me off is that Alex's own insecurities made him look for a solution for Magnus to become mortal. And obviously he did all of that behind Magnus's back. That is a completely unacceptable thing, if you ask me. Why? But that's, you know, one issue, and they broke up after it, and I was like, okay, they had their cute moments, but they broke up, and now they're gonna have their character developments and are gonna be happy afterwards. Yeah, no. The thing is that I really like Malik as a ship in other books, especially in the Dark Artifices series. I really felt like they have a really great dynamic. They seemed to be equal partners towards each other. They were listening and caring about the other person. I really like that. But in this book, in the 5th book, when Alec starts looking for a way to make Magnus mortal, and Magnus finds out about it and rightfully is pissed off and breaks things off with Alec. In the 6th book, Alec is mourning. He's apologizing constantly to Magnus. Magnus doesn't want to take it in, which I understand. I understand both of them, to be honest with you. I understand that Alec regrets everything. He seems really genuine about it, and Magnus is very torn and he doesn't want to do it. He's brokenhearted. But what made me just absolutely furious was the fact that we find out from Magnus that every single one of Alex's friends came to him, and instead of just checking up on him, instead of asking, "Hey, Magnus, how are you feeling after the breakup?" No one does that. You know what they do? Oh yeah, they tell him that, well, Alec is sorry, so like, you could forgive him and get back to him because like he really loves you. Excuse me? Huh? Magnus does not own anything to you. But no one came to check up on him, but everyone just started poking their noses into not their own relationship, but Magnus's relationship. And I felt so sorry for Magnus, because not only was he mistreated in this situation, but Magnus is always mistreated. Magnus is never treated like a character, like a person. Magnus is always treated like a tool. Everyone talks to him only when they need something from him. And that's why I really liked him with Alec, because I felt like, well, finally someone sees him as like a person with feelings. And the second that he breaks up with Alec, all his friends come to him and they're like, well, but like Alec is suffering, so you should go get back to him. Did you even ask how Magnus is feeling? Did you even check up on him? First of all, who are you even to tell him what to do? Who are you to tell him to get back with his ex? I couldn't. That was the moment where I stopped shipping Malik. As much as I loved them as a couple, I couldn't. I would not want to be with someone who has friends like this. Honorable mentions for the characters is I want to briefly talk about Isabelle, because Isabelle, she could be written out of the story and the whole story would be exactly the same. The only thing she brings to the story is the drama. She gets almost no character development. Her entire grief over their parents' divorce is not resolved. Another thing is that Isabelle's entire existence is at the beginning to basically make Clary look both bad and good. Bad in a way that Clary feels insecure when she looks at Isabelle, but good for us readers because we think that, well, Clary is not like Isabelle. Isabelle cares about like makeup and stuff. I just want to say that Isabelle is one of those characters that, in my opinion, could have been such a badass character because she's able to combine these feminine traits, such as, for example, liking makeup, wearing short skirts, high heels, with being a strong woman who, you know, has more to offer to everyone else than just her looks. Unfortunately, that's not Isabelle. It didn't feel like Isabelle is a character on her own. She always existed as a tool to make other character have a development. So for example, Clary realizing that she doesn't have to see Isabelle as a threat just because she's not like her. Or for Simon to realize that I'm gonna sacrifice my relationship in order to save everyone. Valentine is a cartoonish villain. I have to admit, I did not enjoy Valentine as a villain. His looks also, by the way, were so... Valentine had white hair for absolutely no reason. I don't know if he was bleaching it or something. He had no personality really. I felt like his relationship with his sons could have been more developed, but it wasn't. It was just there for the shock value. My overall thoughts about the story is that I really believe that any other Cassandra Clare series is much better than this one. And if they ever want to pick up an adaptation of it again, first of all, don't make it into a TV show, please. Make it into a movie. Pick up any other series. Good points that I have to talk about is, first of all, the world building. I love the world building. I think that's why I didn't mind the very heavy exposition happening in the first book, because I was learning about it myself and I felt really intrigued by it. Another thing I love is Clave itself, because Clave like really feels, ironically enough, so goddamn realistic. I really felt like there's a good representation of people who have different moralities and all of them just basically are trying to rule the country. I love the inner conflicts within Clave. I felt like Clave is such a great part that you can put into every book, which is what Cassandra does. She does always put Clave as some sort of conflict point because the characters always will stumble upon Clave in whatever they're doing. It's never like a black or white type of situation. Clave is not always good, but they're also not always bad. They are just people trying to manage the society and they make mistakes. They do have prejudice against certain races. Like for example, in the Dark Artifices series, which is probably my favorite series from Cassandra, there is so much prejudice against fairies because in this series, the fairies stood on Sebastian's side, right? So it makes sense. So that concludes my experience rereading these books, and there was a lot.